When we saw the overwhelmingly positive feedback on the first day of our open alpha, we knew we had a good game on our hands. Today, I'd like to share with you what we did to make Breachers a successful game. Welcome, everybody. My name is Pieter, and I'm the CTO at Triangle Factory, a Belgian-based game development studio with a team of around 40 people. This talk is about our most recent game, Breachers, on which I was the lead developer. Breachers is a multiplayer 5v5 tactical shooter game for MetaQuest and other VR platforms, which we released earlier this year. The game has been a critical and commercial success with very positive reviews, a large and active community, esports leagues, and a healthy player base. Now today, I want to share some of our insights about how we approach the development, the launch, and the post-launch of Breachers, and talk about some of the important decisions that we made along the way. First, I'll talk about how we leverage the immersion of VR to enhance the tactical shooter genre. Then I'll talk briefly about some of our best practices and what we consider key success factors. Then we'll move into how we marketed the game and built a community around it. And lastly, I'll provide some insights in how we finished and shipped our game thanks to that community and how we are growing and carrying the game forward post-release. Breachers isn't the first VR game that we've made at Triangle Factory. In early 2021, we released a game called Hyperdash, a 5v5 multiplayer VR arena shooter. Hyperdash was a successful launch. We launched it as a premium game initially, then it went free to play late last year, and it still has a healthy player base and community today. Now, Hyperdash was our first breakthrough in the VR market and taught us several valuable lessons that we were able to take into the development of our next game. We knew we wanted our next VR game to be bigger and more ambitious, and the tactical shooter genre seemed like a logical step after Hyperdash. Now, back when we first thought about the concept of Breachers, there were no really popular tactical shooters in the VR ecosystem. So we knew it was going to be a challenge, but being huge fans of the genre ourselves, we were motivated to make it happen. Now, from the beginning, our concept for Breachers revolved around two opposing factions. On the one hand, we have the revolters, the revolutionaries dressed in yellow, and the enforcers, an elite police force that is trying to prevent the revolters from reaching their goals. Revolters are on the defense, and enforcers are on the attack. Now, their job is usually to defuse a bomb within a given amount of time or perform a similar objective. The game would have a realistic near-future setting with locations like high-tech factories or a skyscraper in a futuristic city. And we wanted a slightly cyberpunk style while still keeping the game world believable and grounded in reality. With the game being a tactical shooter, we knew we wanted to have a large arsenal of different weapons, weapon attachments, and gadgets to support different styles of gameplay depending on the situation and on players' preferences. And since it's a multiplayer, team-based game, we knew that communication would be important, so voice chat would also be a central part of the experience. So we started building a prototype with the basic multiplayer setup and gunplay, which was actually fairly straightforward after having made Hyperdash already. But the challenge was to make it into a fun tactical shooter built specifically for VR. For this, we looked for gameplay mechanics and interactions that would fit the tactical shooter genre and that played to the strength of VR. Now, to us, that is immersion, physicality, and hand interactions. So we came up with 3 core movement mechanics that take advantage of these, namely vaulting, rappelling, and leaning. Let's go into them. So, vaulting lets you clear an obstacle, like a table or a window, by grabbing it and pulling yourself over or through it. Now, at first glance, this may seem like a tricky thing to do in VR, but prototyping has revealed pretty quickly that it's actually quite intuitive and natural feeling. To do this, we give the player some visual feedback, showing them where they can grab onto something. All they have to do is press the grip button on their controller while the grab indicator dot is active, and then physically pull the controller towards their body to initiate this vault action. It's simple, it feels good, and because it's controlled by a physical action by the player, most players don't experience any motion sickness when doing it, which is something that is extremely important to consider when creating VR interactions. Our second movement mechanic is rappelling, which means attaching yourself to the edge of a structure and climbing up with a rope. which is something that only the attacking team can do in our game. Now, the basic mechanic is simple again. You point one of your hands towards the point where you want to connect, which is usually at the edge of a rooftop, and then you press the trigger button. This shows a colored indicator of whether you actually can attach at that point, and if the indicator is green, you can then release the trigger, and your Appel gadget shoots up while remaining attached to your body with a rope. You're now on this wall. You can actually move up and down the rope and sideways, letting you navigate anywhere you want on that vertical surface. The third movement mechanic we added is leaning, and this has ended up being a subtle but very important tactical mechanic of the game. Leaning lets a player move only their upper body in VR, so they can aim, look around the corner, or even lean out of a window while their lower body stays in cover. Now we do this by keeping the position of the player fixed in the world, as long as they're not moving around using the joystick on their controller. The movement of their headsets is treated as local movement and only drives the upper part of your body while the lower body stays fixed in place. Now finally, in addition to those movement mechanics, we also prototyped different ways to handle other interactions, like weapon reloading and inventory management. For inventory management, we attach all weapons and gadgets to your body, so you can look down, grab, and drop items as necessary. Wow, nothing new there. I mean, plenty of games do that. But we did make some very conscious decisions. For example, we don't want to attach anything to the player's back, because then you actually can't see those items. And additionally, playtesting revealed that we needed to draw outlines of where your item should go to avoid dropping your gun or gadget to the floor instead of equipping it. For reloading, we prototyped different mechanics, but we ended up with something very simple. To reload, you just press a button to eject a magazine, you grab a new one from your hip, you move it towards your weapon, slam it in, and you're done. Now, we deliberately avoid complicated reloads like you see in some other VR games, because we want to keep the basic gameplay in Breachers simple and accessible. Now, it took a while to prototype and refine those new mechanics, but once we put them all together, it felt very clear to us that we had a solid foundation to build a fun tactical VR shooter on. So we then showed our prototype to our friends at Meta, and they agreed there was an interesting game to be made. So we scaled up our team and we started production. All right, talking about scale, Breachers is the biggest game we've made so far, and we had to scale up to quite a large team to get it done. At one point, we had more than 20 developers and artists working on the project, all working on different features or bug fixes at the same time. This required us to step up our DevOps game quite significantly. We set up some dedicated build servers and provided our tools to developers to easily make and deploy new builds for whatever target platform or environment that they need to test. We also have a nightly build, so every morning you can come in and play the latest stable version of the game on a game server that's already ready to go. Nothing needed to add to this. For MetaQuest and Rift builds, we then deploy straight to the Meta product page, using different release channels for our different environments. The last part of that puzzle is a custom modular build system for Unity, which lets us define different build presets and customize all the settings and actions that need to be applied for a particular build. This makes it much easier to define and keep track of the different kinds of builds that we need to make. And it has the advantage that developers can make local builds on their computer using the exact same configuration as we use on our build servers. We also invested a lot into our production pipeline, with the goal of speeding up our art workflow and ensuring that all assets that are produced for the game were optimized and met our technical requirements. For example, putting all our textures into texture arrays automatically, batching static meshes together, avoiding mesh colliders, and so on. We use Blender as a level design tool, and we have custom export and import tools to transfer those files into Unity while automatically checking if they meet those requirements. Now, this tooling has been a huge time saver during our production. One of the main goals for Breachers that I think we delivered well on was to stand out visually. We wanted to really raise the bar for what a multiplayer shooter on a mobile VR headset could deliver graphically. So we set out a target for visual quality that was ambitious, but actually still attainable. We decided early on to set the MetaQuest 2 as our baseline and not to support less powerful devices anymore. We invested time into writing custom shaders to achieve a physically based rendering look while still being able to hit our performance target of 90 frames per second on Quest 2. Now, we wrote those shaders because we want to be in control of where our performance is spent. Writing shaders that only exactly do what we want with the lowest amount of instructions really help us to push the visuals. We then use those shaders in combination with reflection probes, and light maps to get nice realistic reflections and lighting on our environments, characters, and the weapons in the game. Now, of course, graphic performance is always about trade-offs. So we chose to optimize our level geometry as much as possible so that our environments are actually very low poly, but we can spend more geometry budgets on detailed weapons and characters. And we make up for the simple level geometry with fairly high-res resolution textures and high-quality baked lighting. Now, besides graphics, we definitely have to mention audio as well, because Breachers is a tactical game, so it really helps to be able to hear footsteps and other sounds very clearly. So we chose to use a spatial audio solution, and we assigned a dedicated audio designer and developer to create, mix, and implement our audio. For this, we have different sounds per surface type, which helps you understand if your bullets can actually penetrate through a surface or not. Or they can help you pinpoint another player's position based on where you hear their footsteps. Again, this required extra effort and care, but it makes the whole game feel more alive and more real. We actually recommend playing the game with headphones to really appreciate what our audio team has accomplished here. Now, all those graphics, audio, and gameplay features, obviously they come at a cost, especially in a 10-person multiplayer game on mobile VR hardware. And I just want to stress here that it's critical to profile and optimize your game as you go. Don't wait until all the features are in the game. This is a pretty hard line to walk because you also don't want to spend all your time just crunching every last nanosecond out of a new feature during development. But you do want to make sure that you measure the impact of everything that gets added and that you try to keep it within certain limits. Now, to facilitate performance testing, we created this vertical slice where we had a fully dressed part of a level with realistic vertex and texture counts, and we used that to create a worst-case scenario where all players would be visible and shooting at each other. And of course, it's important not just to test this from your development machine, you have to test this on your target hardware as well. Now, as all these systems were coming together in the summer of 2022, we decided it was time to announce the game to the world with a launch trailer, and to set a target date for an early access alpha version of the game just a few months later. We knew we still had a lot of work to do, but putting a deadline on it helped us to focus on getting a good playable version together for the alpha. And that trailer really forced us to finalize the designs for the characters, to nail down the look and feel of the game, and to finish up Factory, our first playable map. We showed our reveal trailer at Gamescom 2022 to excited reactions from the VR gaming community, and then we went on to preparing our first alpha release. Now, our approach to marketing and actually launching Breachers was heavily informed by our experience from Hyperdash. And Hyperdash has taught us that it's really valuable to have a public alpha where users get to play your game and give feedback. But importantly, they also help to create nice marketing material to help you promote your game. And in the age of live streaming and video content, your game's fans are your biggest promoters. And we took that into account when deciding how to handle early access for Breachers. We launched our first alpha version for MetaQuest 2, and we delivered it as a standalone build, distributed directly on our Discord server. We did this deliberately because these early versions, they still had a lot of rough edges, so installing the game required a little bit of technical knowledge, which meant that our early player base was a little bit more technical themselves. This leads to a better understanding of bugs and more motivation to report them to us. So we set up special channels on Discord where people could post bug reports and suggestions, and we set up optimization to integrate these directly into our project management tools. This way we could not only read the feedback, but we could also track it and follow up on it in an organized way. We actually got a huge amount of useful feedback from these first few versions. And as the game was getting more stable, we provided an easier way to install the game by distributing this through side quests and by releasing a PC VR version of our alpha because there was such a high demand from it from our community. Now, the flip side of having technically savvy players is that some of them started to exploit vulnerabilities in a malicious way. As the alpha grew, it also exposed us to hackers. And while it was annoying to have to deal with wall hackers and aimbots, we're still grateful that this happened during our alpha because we learned a lot about how to respond to these hacks and which parts of our game were vulnerable. This really helped us ensure that our players had the best experience possible when we finally launched Breachers. Now, an open alpha is not just about helping us to develop the game. It's just as much about kickstarting and supporting our player community. Because fans of your game, they actually want to get involved, they want to share their feedback and find friends to play with. Or competitive players, they need a place to organize themselves into clans or leagues for esports. And as a developer, it's great if you can provide a platform for all these things, that you can stay involved in what the community does, and that you can find ways to support them in any way you can. And the platform we use for this is Discord. We try to centralize our player community there, we communicate with our players there, and we gather their feedback. Part of our development team is also on the server to answer questions directly, and we encourage members of our Discord to share their own Breachers-related content right there. Another thing that really helped with the marketing aspect of the alpha was our spectator mode. The Spectator is a flat-screen PC version of the game where you can join a session as a viewer and watch it in different ways. You can look through the eyes of any player, or you can fly around freely, you can see live stats for all the players, you can choose to see locations of the opposing team, and so on. Now, this is great for content creators who want to capture high-quality footage of their games for videos or live streams. And also for competitive matches where you might have someone giving live commentary on a match in an esports context. Now, because our goal was to use a spectator to record high-quality footage as if you're playing in VR, we tried to mimic the first-person view mode to be as close to the VR feeling as possible. And having the spectator build available from day one of our open alpha meant that a lot of the early content being shared about Breachers was of a higher quality than you would typically see for other VR games. In addition to this, we quickly saw some VR influencers picking up our game and making high quality and praising videos and reviews. And when we got closer to releasing Breachers as a finished product, we decided to invite a bunch of those influencers to our office to preview the full game with us and play with the devs. It was actually a win-win situation, because we all had a blast playing, we received some valuable feedback, and they got to report some fun footage that they could make into cool video content ahead of our release, instead of rushing to put something together on the day of our release. In the end, the open alpha for Breachers turned out to be a big success. Over the course of 4 months, it was played by over 60,000 people, who provided us with over 3,500 suggestions and bugs. And it grew our Discord community to around 80,000 people. This made us one of the largest VR Discord communities worldwide. All the player feedback during the alpha had a significant influence on our roadmap for the full release, and that it let us set the right priorities and align our own idea with the game, with community expectations. It really helped us to push the full release over the finish line. Now, the full commercial release of the game then happened in April of this year, with a simultaneous release on all our supported platforms. We support cross-buy for Meta Quest and Rift, and we have cross-play between all platforms. This is done so that we don't split the player base unnecessarily. And our full version was expanded significantly compared to the alpha. It featured 4 maps instead of 1, and 2 game modes, a built-in friend system, a tutorial, a training mode, and some more features. Now, behind the scenes, we also added a number of things to make the game truly production ready, like extra analytics, monitoring tools, a stronger server architecture. And all the testing and bug fixing during the alpha really helped us to have a really smooth launch without any major issues. The reception from our players and reviewers has been overwhelmingly positive, with the game being praised for its visuals and audio, its game mechanics, and its replayability. And today, almost 6 months later, we have more than 70,000 monthly active users and a similar number of members in our Discord. There is a very active esports scene, and we are still pushing out some major content and feature updates. We're very, very happy with how Breachers has been received by the VR community, and we look forward to supporting and growing the game for a long time still to come. Now, operating a live multiplayer game with a large player base does present some challenges which you can't afford to ignore as a developer. An obvious one is server capacity. You need dedicated servers to run your game. They need to be stable, and there need to be enough of them to support your player base. We work with Unity Gaming Services to manage our game servers in multiple regions to ensure our players get a good low latency experience regardless of where they are. And these servers, they usually give us enough capacity to handle our player influx, but at peak moments, we may overrun our capacity, and then we have to spin up extra servers in the cloud. And cloud servers, they are more expensive than dedicated machines, but we take care to provision enough server capacity based on our player statistics. Another really important aspect of operating a live multiplayer game is dealing with bad actors and toxic player behavior in-game. Now, the majority of players, they just want to have a good time and enjoy the game with their teammates, but there is a small subset of players who will exhibit toxic behavior and will actively make the game worse for others. Now, as a developer, we believe it's our responsibility to do what we can to counter this. So from launch, we supported muting other players in voice chats, reporting them for bad behavior from within the game. Our community manager then reviews those reports for breaches of our terms of use and may decide to ban a player from the game, either temporarily or permanently. Now, this in itself mitigates the problem, but it also puts the burden of reporting this bad behavior on other players. Now, we think this isn't really fair, and it also prevents a lot of bad behavior from being reported. And for this reason, we recently added a proactive reporting solution called ToxMods, which detects toxic behavior in voice chats on public servers and reports it to us. Now, we don't store these recordings, except those that have been flagged for bad behavior, and we never sanction the players automatically. Bans still happen based on the decision made by our human content moderators, according to the same rules as before. Voice moderation just proactively alerts our moderation team, effectively shifting the burden of reporting off of our players. And when we added this to the game, a small minority of players were quite vocally against it. But on the other hand, many members of our community expressed their support. And in our experience, it has been a really important tool in helping to keep the experience of playing Breachers online fun and safe for everyone. Now, of course, most players are just excited about playing and enjoying the game, and they're interested in what's coming next. So we have tried to be open about sharing our roadmap with the community as much as possible. But this can be a balancing act. On one hand, it's good to share information with the community and get their feedback at an early stage. But on the other hand, you don't want to set unrealistic expectations or make promises that you can't keep. So what we've settled on is putting our public roadmap in the game itself as a whiteboard in our menu. This whiteboard doesn't give any concrete dates, but it does evolve as the game gets updated, with features getting added or crossed out as they get released. We've put out several major content updates, and we're currently still focusing on improving competitive play, as a lot of our players have been asking for these features. We also think that Breachers has a bright future ahead of it as a competitive and esports game, and we really want the game to live up to its potential in those areas. So, I mentioned at the start of this talk that we would try to analyze the reasons why Breachers has been a successful VR title. However, we've gone through a lot of topics today, from game design to DevOps, performance to marketing, from community management to live ops. And the truth is, launching a successful title can't be narrowed down to just one specific thing we did right. You need to consider all these aspects and have a plan in place. But you also need to be ready to adapt and change your plans based on the feedback and data that you get from your players. Thank you for listening.